Now, brushes in Photoshop are incredibly powerful, not just for painting, but they can also be a huge help to photographers when it comes to making difficult selections and cutouts a heck of a lot easier and actually look perfect. So in this video, I'm going to hand you over to my friend Aaron Blaise, an incredible artist who worked at Disney for over 20 years on some of their biggest movies, such as Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, and Pocahontas, to name just a few. And he's going to give you nothing short of a masterclass in creating hair and fur brushes. Now, this tutorial he originally recorded for a chapter in a book I wrote called The Photoshop Toolbox, and I stumbled across it again yesterday when sorting out my hard drives, so I thought I'd share it with you here. So, here's Aaron.
Okay, so I want to talk about brush making in Photoshop. It's really not that difficult. It's one of the reasons why when I create brush packs for people on my website, I put 20, 30 brushes in there, so it's actually worth their time to buy it, because if people really knew how easy it is to make these brushes, they would just make themselves. And so that's the reason I put piles of brushes in my packs. And let me show you what I mean. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create the brush, and then we're going to tell that brush, we're going to give that brush different attributes for it to do different things. And one of my most popular brush packs has been my directional fur brushes or hair brushes. And so I'm going to show you how to create a fur brush in Photoshop. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to create a document. So I'm going to hit New, and I'm going to create a document that's, let's say, I'm going to go by inches, and I'm going to go 5 inches, fairly small, by 5 inches at 300 dpi. That's just my general preference. It gives me enough resolution, and I'm going to hit Create. So here we go. So here's a document, and the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layer on top. I want to keep this document underneath the background. I'm going to keep it white for now. Later on, when we create the brush, I'll be turning that off, but I'll show you what I mean first. Right now, the layer on top, I'm going to go to that layer. I'm going to make my brush black. When you're creating brushes, the computer or Photoshop only sees in black and white as far as the brush creation. Okay? So I can do different values of black to white, and with the whole gray spectrum in between. So the first thing that I want to do in creating a fur brush, you're gonna laugh when you see how easy this is. I'm gonna go like this. Now I'm gonna show you different fur brushes we can make, but here's the easiest one. I've got a brush right now, and you can do this with any brush. But right now I'm just creating a line that kind of fades on and fades off. Okay? Now, this is a custom brush that I've used. You can do this with any brush, any of Photoshop's standard brushes. Like here's one right here, Glenn. We can use that one if you want, the erodible brush. I'll go ahead and erase this. So using the erodible brush, I can do a line that fades on, fades off, just like so. There we go, one single line. I'm going to let it fade just a bit. Right over here, I want to let that line fade out and then fade out on the bottom. Just like that. So simple. Okay, so there's your line. Very simple. Fade on, fade off. I'm going to go ahead and just center that right about, there it is. There's my center, okay? Now, I'm going to turn off my background. So now my one line is sitting over a blank background. Now the next part is very simple. We come up to Edit, come down to the drop-down menu, and we're going to go to Define Brush Preset. Click on that, and let's just call this Hair 1. Okay? We're going to hit OK. Now, when I go to my brushes, I've got a hairbrush. Now, when I draw, what's it going to look like? I'm going to turn off this, turn this on. Right now it's very big. And what is it doing? It's just doing this really big. It's not really doing anything. We have to adjust the attributes. This is the most important part of brush making. This is where you can do all kinds of stuff just through the attributes. So let's get rid of this. The first thing that I want to do, I'm going to create a new layer, is I'm going to click on this folder right here. You can see this folder in the upper left. I'm going to click on that, and this is going to give me a menu of all kinds of different, a bird just flew into my window. Of all kinds, he's okay. He's not hurt. Of all kinds of different attributes. Right here you can see shape dynamics, scattering, texture, dual brush, color dynamics, transfer, all these different things that I have to choose from in order to give this brush different attributes. And when I click on each one, there's a whole list of things within each category that I can change. This is where you have almost an infinite ability to change up your brush to give it different looks, different attributes. Okay? So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to go to my brush. Oops, sorry. Clicked on the wrong one. I'm going to my brush presets. There we go. Back to brush. I want to go to my brush tip shape. There we go. So the first thing that I want to do, watch when I turn this arrow. I'm going to turn this arrow and you're going to see down below, it gives me an example of what's happening with as I turn the brush tip, the way the stroke will look, okay? So as I turn this, I want to try to line the brush up like so. There we go, okay? So that's the first thing that I want to do. The next thing that I want to do is I want to go to my shape dynamics. And I'm going to go to control. And this is the key right here. This is a really good attribute. Right down here, it says direction. Now I'm going to click on that. I want to come back to my brush tip shape. And I want to turn this just a little bit more so I can flatten out that line. Now watch what happens when I draw. I'm going to shrink the brush a little bit. As I draw, it will follow the direction that I'm drawing. This is important for making a hairbrush. So we're halfway there, like Bon Jovi says. Okay? We're halfway there in getting our hairbrush created. Already it looks like there's all kinds of really cool effects you can get just by drawing like that. That's kind of cool. The directional, right here, that directional control under angle jitter is super, super handy on every brush that you make, okay? So there's that. Now, the next thing we want to do, I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to go to scattering. I'm going to turn this on. I'm going to go to my scattering, and I'm going to scatter it just a little bit here. And look what it's doing underneath. It's creating a fur texture, basically. And I'm going to keep the count down because I'm looking down here and I can already see that there's a fair amount of hair there, of brush strokes. What it's basically doing is it's scattering all of the lines. It's multiplying that one line and it's creating this hair. Now, one thing about it, you might not be able to notice it too much here. I'm going to go ahead and change the color. Let's make it kind of brown. It's all of the brush strokes are basically repeats of the same stroke over and over. Let's make it feel just a touch more random. So I'm going to come back to shape dynamics, and I'm going to flip the X, and I'm going to flip the X axis, and I'm going to flip the Y axis. It's going to randomly flip it this way and this way. Okay, I'm sorry, you can't see me. It's going to randomly flip it up and down, and it's going to randomly flip it sideways. So now, when I draw, it's slightly, you don't see it, and at least not in this brush, but if we had a much more unique line, it makes it much more random. Now, I can come out, now let's say we want to have less hair in there and maybe a little bit more scatter. Let's get rid of this. I'm going to come up to my brush tip shape. I'm going to go to the spacing. I'm going to push that spacing apart. Look what's happening underneath. You can see there's less and less hair that's being created. I go to my scattering and open that up a little bit. Here's another thing. If I go to shape dynamics, there's a thing called size jitter. I can get the size of the brush of the hair strokes to vary in size from small to large randomly. So now when I draw, I've got something that's a little bit more sparse, and I can have a little bit more control over it, like so. Now I'm going to come back to my brush tip shape. Maybe we want a little bit more fur in there. There's a little bit more, just like so. All of a sudden we have hair, fur, dog fur, cat fur, whatever it might be. Now, just by varying the type of line that you use in the beginning, you can come up with different attributes to your fur. Coming back to the shape dynamics, I can also play with the angle jitter. Maybe the fur is a little bit more random, a little more coarse. Watch this. Just by playing with the angle jitter, now I've got something that has a completely different attribute. Like so. And by making enough fur there, it has a completely different feel, like the fur is growing in different directions. Okay? So there's that. What if, I'm going to come back, there's that brush. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And if you want to say, if you create your attributes the way you like them, there's a little page icon right here. Click on that and it allows you to save the attributes you've just created. So I'm going to go hair 1A. Okay? Now let's say, create another layer. We're going to create a completely different feel. So I'm going to once again grab my Photoshop brush. And what if we did something that was multiple bits of fur? So here, I'm just going to go like so. Very random. I'm going to darken some of them. Let some of them come way out. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and stretch it. So I'm going to go to Edit, Free Transform. I'm going to stretch that out a little bit. Make that a little bit longer. Be a little skinnier. This is almost like a little tuft of fur. This is just a pure experiment. See what happens. See what we get. I want to go ahead and darken it. So I'm going to go to here, my hue and saturation. I'm just going to darken everything like so. And then I want to go in, I'm just going to lighten some of the top so it fades out. So it fades into, when we start making the brush itself, it'll fade underneath as we layer the fur on. So, okay. So once again, I'm going to turn that background off. Going to Edit, Define Brush Preset. I'm going to hit OK, and once again, here's our brush. Okay. Let's turn that back on. Turn this off. Create a new layer. And I'm going to go to my brush presets, which I've already got open. Remember, I want to hit Direction. And then I'm going to go to my brush tip shape. And I can turn it this way. I'm going to get something. First of all, I'm going to shrink this down. You can see now I've got something that follows the direction that I'm drawing, okay? So we've got that. That's very important. You want it to follow the direction that you're drawing. Now, I'm going to jump over. I'm going to hit my spacing, push the spacing apart a little bit. I'm going to flip the X, not the Y, because I want the direction of the fur to stay in the same direction. Okay, if I flip the Y, look what happens. It flops it back and forth. I don't want that. Flops it up and down, I should say. So what I'm going to do is just flip the X. I'm also going to push that size jitter. So some of them are small, some of them are large. And once again, let's go to the scattering. Push the scattering. Come back to the brush tip shape. Pull back on I'm going to really pile up the amount of fur. And now create a new layer. And look at this. I've got a completely different look to the fur. It almost looks like, a bird's feathers, downy feathers, or very soft fur on like a rabbit or something like that. But a completely different random attribute using the same methods, but a different brush to start with, or a different piece of art to start with. Look at the feel that you get, how random it can become just by creating a different brush to start with. So you can start with a single line. You can start with a series of lines like I just did on this brush, and you can create all different types of attributes just through playing with your brush attributes up in the menu over here. Try one more just for fun. If I come up here, I'm going to go make my brush black, and let's go and jump over here to, first of all, let's go ahead and save that. Now I'm going to come back to my original brush that I start with, Photoshop. What if we go just a random curl, like so. Something very, there we go. So now I can go up here. I'm going to turn off the background. I'm going to go to Define. Define Brush Preset. Hit OK. I've got my little cursive L, it looks like. I'm going to create a new layer. Come back up. And I'm going to go to my brush tip shape. This one, I think I will turn it this way. And then I'm going to go to my shape dynamics, turn that on. Whoops, shape dynamics, there we go. And hit direction. And then I'm going to turn on my scattering. And I'm going to scatter it all just a little bit. I'm going to go to back to my shape dynamics. I'm going to flip the X. I'm going to flip the Y. I'm going to play with the size jitter. I'm going to go back to the brush tip shape. I'm going to pull everything together a little bit. Let's go back to my scattering. I'm going to scatter it. Now look, see how I've got holes in here? Now I can go down to the count, and I can increase the count like so. Now I can do something that's just completely different. Like so. You never know what you're going to get. Something completely different. Let me come over here, and I'm going to go back to my shape dynamics, and let's play with the angle jitter. I can fill in gaps by pushing that angle jitter. Now watch. Now I've got something. Almost feels like like a Brillo pad, but very cool patterning. This could be any kind of moss. It could be moss. It could be afro. It could be any kind of thing. It's all kinds of. If I go to the green, We want to make it moss. You know, there's all kinds of fun stuff you can do with it. The key is to start with varying types of artwork, like we just did, whether it's a one single line, maybe a fluffy line, maybe a curly line like this. You can start with anything, and then go in there and start playing with your attributes. Remember that directional control under the angle jitter in shape dynamics is key. That will give you the control of creating directional fur brushes. And what I mean by directional fur brushes is, as I draw, it follows the direction that I'm drawing. Okay? So that is how you create fur brushes in Photoshop.
Huge thanks again goes to Aaron for originally recording this, and if you want to learn more from him, then just head over to his website, which is creatureartteacher.com. For now though, that's all I've got for you, so as always I'd really appreciate a thumbs up if you've got something from this video, and if you haven't yet, click on subscribe, which really should just say follow, because just that one action is a great way that you can support the growth of this channel. But for now, like I said, that's me, I'm done. I'll catch you in the next video.